form of Donegan. Donegan on Is It Phoenix today, and Zach Allen betraying the Esper colors. Headed over to Jeskai today, Jerry. What do you think about that move?
Well, I'm not interested in that. I just want to look at Dylan's Is It Phoenix deck. Dylan, a master of like these blue aggro tempo cantripping strategies, basically in all formats.
Absolutely. Jerry, a control hater, as always. Zach Allen, not a control hater. He's going to start on a land. Donegan just going to go ahead and fetch. Looks like we're going to get a shock land and go ahead and opt here.
I wrote about control this weekend, man, and how I thought it was good in Modern, how it would be good for this tournament.
You did say that. I will give you the credit. This is actually Serum Visions. I'm sorry. Dylan's going to go ahead and resolve that one.
I'm not sure about this Lightning Bolt Splash in Zach Allen's deck, but I think in general, if we're talking about control players in Modern and who you should listen to, it's probably Zach.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely pick Zach's brains, see what brought him to this Jeskai list. As you mentioned, you're looking at 3 Lightning Bolts in the main as the only red cards, as well as Lightning Helix. 3 copies of Lightning Helix. So Zach, maybe wanting to lean on that life game this week, maybe expecting a lot of humans. I think that's the type of move you're thinking if you're going to be facing down humans for a bunch of rounds. Yeah,
3 copies of Narset Partner of Veils in Zach's main deck, which is not crazy, but what I really want to do when you have these cheap Planeswalkers that are so impactful is, rather than try and kill everything one-to-one, just play things like Timely Reinforcements. I really don't think that you need to actually branch out into the third color, but Zach disagrees.
Yeah, go ahead and take a look on Cardboard Live. You'll see what our players are working with. Also a few red cards in Zach's sideboard. You see a Lightning Helix, you see a Molten Rain, and you see an Anger of the Gods.
Yeah, that's fine. Molten Rain is gas.
You've always been a Molten Rain lover, Jerry. One of your favorite spells.
I wouldn't say I love it. I would say I get tricked into playing it more often than not. But
here is Opt. Dylan going to go ahead and take a look at the top card of the library. Players just developing mana thus far. No real moves onto the battlefield. As is often the case with these 2 decks, Is It Phoenix looking to kind of do a bunch of stuff in a flurry. Jeskai control, very content to just sit back, wait to see what its opponent is going to do.
Yeah, these players know each other. It wouldn't be surprising to me if at this point of the game both players can probably guess what is in the other person's deck. Zach still playing his Expedition mana base, and obviously he's going to change out maybe some removal spells, some win conditions, but he's going to be doing the same thing. And if you follow Dylan at all, you know that he loves these Phoenix decks.
Absolutely. I wonder if that Sulfur Falls from Zach gave Dylan a bit of pause. Here's a Narset. First strike coming from Zach. He's going to play Narset, pass the turn back to Donegan. No activation on that Narset.
From playing decks like Esper Control in Standard against Is It Phoenix in Standard, you learn things very quickly where you play Narset and you minus, and then it just gets attacked by an Arclight Phoenix or something. It is so much better to actually just play the Narset, force them to have 2 different things to deal with it, and Dylan's trying.
Yeah, look at this line of play. So what happened is Dylan fired off a Lightning Bolt, I believe in upkeep at the Narset, was then planning to use Noxious Revival to put that Lightning Bolt back on the top of his library, but Zach responded with Surgical Extraction.
A bunch of weird Phyrexian mana spells coming into play here.
And that Surgical Extraction is going to resolve. Zach going to get a full look at what Dylan's working with here. 2 copies of Surgical Extraction in Zach Allen's main deck, still finding uses for that card in this metagame. Phoenix still a big player despite all these new tools that are lurking in the format.
Yeah, and 3 copies of Noxious Revival in Dylan's deck too, which you've seen this pick up a lot after Oliver 2 did pretty well in an online Mox event and at the recent MC in London.
Correct.
Basically taking the flex slot of Gut Shot and Surgical Extraction. And normally from Zach's side, you have these Surgicals main to deal with things like Arclight Phoenix, so you would prefer to use it on that. But in this case, he just values the Narset so much because this Phoenix deck is relying on drawing multiple cards per turn with all of its cantrips.
Yeah, I think protecting Narset is big game here and a very important focal point of this matchup. Dylan's going to have to figure out what to do with the rest of his turn now that his plan has been foiled.
And he's drawn a card already for the turn.
Yep. Here comes Thought Scour. Target himself. Noxious Revival. Land goes to the bin. No draw. Narset going to disable that. That card gets a lot worse when you're not drawing a card off of it, Jerry.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dylan could have used the Thought Scour on Zach's turn, because you can draw a card on each turn.
Yep.
But there, Dylan just trying to get lucky and
Phoenix.
mill over an Arclight Phoenix. That would be his third spell for the turn.
Yep. So that makes sense. He's got Faithless Looting, going to be able to go ahead and guarantee that Arclight Phoenix. But Zach with the second Surgical Extraction, and Dylan's just going to pack it in. He said that's enough.
I love the face from Dylan. He's just like, okay, you got me. I was trying my best.
Wow. That was an incredible game, actually. A very quick game, but really interesting stuff. Surgical Extraction critical there for Zach Allen. We are going to go to the sideboards now. Why don't we start over on Dylan Donegan's side? You were looking at 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Saheeli, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Alpine Moon, 2 Abrade, 1 Pia and Kieran Nalaar, 1 Narset, and 1 Lightning Axe. Jerry, what are you liking from Dylan's side?
The Planeswalkers, for sure. Those are nice little pickups for this deck. A lot of the time, Izzet Phoenix needs a way to fight opponents in post-board games when they're bringing in graveyard hate. Saheeli does a great job of that, especially if you have something like Crackling Drake in the main deck. So I definitely like Saheeli as this threat that allows him to sidestep things like Surgical Extraction. Narset, you saw, obviously very powerful in a mirror match where both players are drawing a bunch of cards. Dylan likely probably interested in P and Kieran Nalaar and the Spell Pierces. Might go towards Blood Moon. You saw a bunch of dual lands from Zach. You don't know how many basics he has, but Jeskai will normally have like 3 or 4.
Zach packing 5 basics this week.
But one's a basic mountain.
Very true.
So it doesn't really count.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Meanwhile, over on Zach's side, we are looking at that 1 Molten Rain that Jerry's excited about. 1 Spell Pierce, 1 Spell Queller, a Wear Tear, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Ashiok, another War of the Spark card here, 2 Celestial Purge, 2 Vendilion Clicks, 1 Ceremonious Rejection, 1 Dovin's Veto, and finally 1 more Lightning Helix. Jerry, what are you doing over on Zach's side?
Celestial Purge is incredible. It removes Arclight Phoenix permanently. It also deals with Pyromancer Ascension, which is maybe the scariest card from Izzet Phoenix. Ashiok Dreamrender is definitely going to come in here too as basically the pseudo rest in peace type of thing that can also sort of function as a threat. And then a lot of different options. You could see the Spell Pierce, you could see the Spell Queller, Anger of the Gods, Vendilion Click, Dovin's Veto, Lightning Helix. It all basically depends on how Zach wants to configure his deck and how many cards he has that he wants to take out.
Celestial Purge also able to manage that Saheeli, which we expect coming out of the sideboard. Previously, it was managing Chandra, which was filling that Planeswalker role. So a lot of flexibility from that card in this matchup for sure.
Yeah, not only in this matchup, but against things like Jund and Death Shadow. Celestial Purge you saw as a 0 or 1 of card in a lot of control sideboards. Now it's firmly a 2 of, and I think it is just an all-star because it has widespread matchup applications.
I agree with you. Well, Zach Allen, as always, is going to be styling in our feature match area with those expeditions, those beautiful foils. If you're looking to style at your next event, why not turn to the Creature Collection? Some of the coolest stuff that Star City makes is available in that Creature Collection. Currently, for Queen and Country, little corgi action there. We should get that one for Dom Harvey. I feel like that's an appropriate playmat for him.
Does he also like corgis?
He seems like the type of guy who would like corgis.
I mean, who doesn't like
That's
corgis,
true.
right?
All dogs are adorable, especially this little guy on Fur Queen and Country. Obviously, it's available in playmats, in sleeves. There's player bundles which contain both. You could head over to go.starcitygames.com/creature collection for some more info.
The Creature Collection stuff goes so deep sometimes. I think this is one of the deep ones for sure.
It is.
But it's great. This one specifically I like.
It's hard to find the tie to Magic here, I'll say that, but it doesn't make it any less adorable.
Yeah, who cares?
Right. I'm always a big fan of bringing the adorable creatures. What's your current playmat of choice, Jerry?
Ooh, I have a Legion one that I use, and I don't know. I've used some stuff from Elena Danner too.
Okay. Very cool.
Her just doing like portraits, landscapes.
Yeah. I presently am rocking an Earl of Squirrel playmat.
Nice.
And it is dope, let me tell you.
So I have a bunch of playmats. I have like the ones kind of set aside that I want to keep that I use on my desk. And it's just like the, cool Ancient Grudge, Noble Hierarch, Kalidas. Just like these cards that I like.
Yep, I use Earl of Squirrel and Squirrel Dealer routinely. It's my 2 go-tos. Dylan Donegan going to fire off Thoughtscour, finds Arclight Phoenix. That's a big get for Dylan. Of course, it's going to need to dodge those surgical extractions.
You've been using a game podcast playmat too.
I do. I bring that one up. I can't anymore. Game podcast Dead and Buried.
Yeah.
Arena deck list now is the podcast.
You can still use it, man.
Oh, okay. I thought we banned all that stuff.
No, it's vintage.
Nice. Pyromancer Ascension on the battlefield from Dylan Donegan. Key card in this matchup. Let's see if Zach's able to find a response to that.
Yeah, good start from Dylan. Obviously, spiking the Arclight Phoenix is huge. Definitely going to be looking to bring that back starting as early as turn 3. And then turn 2 Pyromancer Ascension means that unless there is something like a Rest in Peace or an Ashiok, Dylan is attacking Zach on multiple angles here.
Yeah, good start here from Dylan. Got in under that Dovin's Veto that is sitting in Zach's hand with the Pyromancer Ascension. Dylan thinking about what he can do on this third turn. Take a look at his hand. You see the Blood Moon came in. Also packing a Manamorphose, some more cantrips. There's a Thought Scour. It's going to rule out Blood Moon for this turn. Makes sense. Zach played the basic island. Not as effective as it could be.
Yeah, Dylan only has 2 lands in hand. Also had a Manamorphose that he could have led on, but generally that is a card that players will want to counter because it is such an investment of your mana. And you look at Dylan now getting to play 2 spells instead into Zach's Dovin Veto and has his Pyromancer Ascension all charged up and ready to go, and that's another reason to save the Manamorphose.
Absolutely, yeah, and this really puts a lot of pressure on Zach to have an answer. He does not, meaning Dylan Donegan gets to untap with an active Pyromancer Ascension, and that is dangerous for Zach Allen. Things are going to start off with those Manamorphoses. Now Dylan basically is ungated on mana. Zach is going to fire off a Spell Pierce on 1 copy. That makes sense. He's got to do something here.
Yeah, that's the best he can do, and it still just means that Dylan can do basically whatever he wants this turn. He has 3 mana to work with now after drawing a land, and could just draw 6 cards with 3 cantrips pretty easily, bring back an Arclight Phoenix.
Yeah, it is tough to overcome active Pyromancer Ascension. The value accumulates very quickly. And here's another Manamorphose, so again, basically ungated on mana.
Yeah, now it's entirely possible that Dylan actually just kills Zach on this turn.
Yeah, scary times for Zach Allen, to be sure. So we know those Arclight Phoenixes are going to be coming back, without a doubt. Only 1 in the bin thus far, but here comes some copied Thought Scours. Just going to bin a couple lands there, draws a card, it's Saheeli. Bin Spell Pierce, another land, draws a card. It is Serum Visions.
Yeah, so what Dylan really wants to do here is basically play as many cantrips as possible, get as deep into his deck as possible, and then as the last cantrip, play Faithless Looting so that you have as many shots to actually find Arclight Phoenix and discard them. And that is assuming, of course, that he isn't just going to kill Zach with, you know, some combination of Noxious Revival, Lightning Bolt type of stuff.
Of course. Dylan going to go ahead and fetch, finds Basic Island. Also has the option to just play Blood Moon at some point. I can't tell if that's a fetch land or a...
It's a Scalding Tarn.
Scalding Tarn. You're good at spotting those expeditions.
I only know that because I used to own one of them.
Okay. They're tough, not going to lie. I love that Zach brings them to the table. I think they're a cool part of his style. But they are tough to spot. So the play from Dylan is actually going to be Saheeli.
And that's reasonable. This adds another axis of attack to the battlefield. Dylan just like looking at his hand, seeing that he's only found 1 Arclight Phoenix, could dig a lot deeper, but just setting up Saheeli on this turn is going to allow him to go kind of bananas next turn.
Yeah, and there's no real pressure on Dylan to do anything overwhelming on this turn. Zach is the one who really needed to stop Dylan from getting these shenanigans underway. Once they happen, it's going to be real difficult for Zach to dig his way out.
Right, I think if Zach were playing a combo deck like Ad Nauseam or something, it might be a little bit different. Dylan would try and get a little bit more aggressive than this, but instead, against Zach's slow Jeskai control deck, he knows that he has basically all the time in the world.
Yeah. Dylan doing a little scrying there. Going to go ahead and bring back that Arclight Phoenix. Zach does have the path, so he's able to contain 1 prong of Dylan's attack, but we know a lot of prongs to this game plan.
Yeah, next turn, Dylan going to have access to 5 mana. Probably going to be able to find a lot of Phoenixes.
So Zach is going to go ahead and fetch here. Finds another non-basic. You want to guess on that one, Jerry?
Sacred Foundry?
I think you're just guessing. But you got it right. Congratulations.
I did get it right. It looks red and white in the art, and I could recognize the hollowed fountain.
Okay. So it was an educated guess.
Yeah, process of elimination.
So Zach trying to stem the bleeding a little bit. He's going to cast Cryptic Command, bouncing that Pyromancer Ascension back to Dylan's hand, hoping it takes him some time to rebuild. Dylan just going to go ahead, deploy Ascension one more time. That's going to trigger Saheeli. Another servo is going to enter the battlefield. And it's cantrip time again.
And it will take a while for Dylan to actually rebuild this thing. And in the meantime, he's not getting like the double value.
Yep.
So this is effectively a time walk from Zach, I think. But again, he still needs to find a way to actually deal with everything that's going on or close the game. And I don't necessarily think he has the capability to do either.
Yeah, I agree with you. And now that Ascension already back online. Dylan just fires off a couple of cantrips. 2 Arclight Phoenixes sitting in Dylan's hand.
With the Faithless looting, too.
Yeah, good chance those find the bin next turn.
Yeah, if Dylan's land wasn't, Spire Bluff Canal wasn't a land that entered the battlefield tapped on this turn, it would have been a lot more dangerous. But again, I still think he's in a fine spot.
Yeah, I think if Zach doesn't do something meaningful here, he's just dead next turn. He agrees. He's not even going to bother playing the next turn.
Doesn't even see the Phoenixes.
Yeah, just scoops it up. He knows that's enough. And that's got to be a lot of what a successful plan from Izzet Phoenix looks like. It just starts generating value early. Zach is never able to catch up. And these permanents, they just pressure you in so many different ways, especially with the addition of Saheeli, a real ability to go wide now.
Right, and it's not the same permanent type like a young Pyromancer that some people used to play, where it is weak against a lot of the cards that people would want against you anyway.
Right.
So the fact that it is a Planeswalker and sits in play, doesn't die to any sort of sweeper or anything, it is huge.
Yeah, another reason why I really like Zach's inclusion of those Celestial Purges. Seems like a good ad for any control deck to be picking up right now. Got to deal with these War of the Spark Planeswalkers, and if you're looking to pick up these War of the Spark Planeswalkers, of course you can get War of the Spark from Star City Games. Head over to go.starcitygames.com/war. We'll hook you up with those booster boxes of War of the Spark. Love this set in every format, Jerry. Deck building opportunities in Modern, Legacy, Vintage, and obviously Standard has been great thus far. Real home run Wizards has on their hands here.
Narset makes me want to play Legacy again, but I am also somewhat concerned that some of these cards might be a little too strong for Standard, or maybe not too strong, but like definitely warp the format in ways that is not ideal.
Yeah, certainly seeing a very Planeswalker-centric format thus far. Teferi Time Reveler really feels like the limiting factor on Standard. Counterspells look pretty horrible in the face of that card, and that's making room for things like Command the Dreadhorde to have a really big impact. Interesting dynamics going on there.
Yeah, and that alone is cool, right? Because Command the Dreadhorde was previewed, and it's like, yeah, obviously this card's really powerful. There are combos with the Wanderer and everything, but you know, you're playing against Thought Erasure, Duress, Absorb, Negate, stuff like that, and it generally doesn't seem like a card like that will be able to make it into Standard. But yeah, when there are enough Teferis out there and counterspells are basically just not playable, bust out the 6-mana sorceries. Let's go.
Sure, why not? Interestingly, no copies of Teferi Time Raveler in Zach Allen's deck.
I think you can make a case for Narset just being stronger in Modern. Even if you're talking about specific applications like mirror matches, which one would you rather have in Modern?
Right. I think it's usually Narset in most cases.
Right.
We saw Teferi in Bant Infect last round. That was interesting. Interesting application there. Really protecting the Inkmoth Nexuses very well from that deck. Both players keeping 7 again. Zach's just going to lead on a tap land. Dylan has Serum Visions on turn 1. Do a little scrying, setting up those future draws. Both cards go to the bottom. Zach untaps, takes a draw. It's like a red card there. May have been Anger of the Gods.
Yep.
No red mana thus far. Just going to play another tap land, pass the turn back to Dylan. Dylan casts Sleight of Hand.
So Dylan kept a 1-lander with a lot of different cantrips and an Arclight Phoenix. So had to spend a few early mana actually being able to find his other land. And now I think stuff will start happening in the game over the next couple turns.
Yep. Turn 3 is where things really start popping. Zach, though, just going to play a land, pass the turn back. Dylan cast Thought Scour, Bin Sahili, and Faithless Looting. Zach with Dovin's Veto at the ready.
Always.
Yeah, that should be his MO, right? Just always carries a copy of Dovin's Veto with him at all times. That card also making some inroads into Modern. Dylan with some powerful options here, but more expensive options. He's got a Narset. He's got Pia and Kieran Nalaar. Does have a third land. Going to deploy that. Start with Pyromancer Ascension. Zach has the right answer for that one. It's Dovin's Veto. Serum Visions as the follow-up from Dylan. Going to bin both cards, or bottom both cards, excuse me. Too much surveilling in my life right now. Zach draws Wear Tear. Interesting draw on the heels of Dovin's vetoing that Pyromancer Ascension.
Yeah, it's awkward. He had Detention Sphere too. I think you can make a case for saving it for a big Arclight Phoenix turn.
Right.
But in this instance, I think having to give Dylan a turn to untap with Pyromancer Ascension before you could play Detention Sphere and have Dovin's Veto up was just too much for Zach. He was just like, no, I'm just going to veto this, sit on the sphere. Hopefully that's good enough.
I could see that argument.
Obviously, he's max punished when he draws, I think, the one-of copy of Wear Tear. Yeah.
Yep, one in the sideboard. Back on Dylan's turn now. He's going to start with Manamorphose. Couple mana floating. Hard-working staff here at SCG, keeping things in order on the battlefield so you know exactly what's up.
Always.
Take a little peek in at Dylan's hand there.
A lot of big stuff.
Yeah.
So last game we saw Dylan get under Zach's counter wall with turn 2 Ascension on the play. Now with Dylan being on the draw and struggling a little bit to hit his land drops. Now Zach has all of his defenses up and everything, but thankfully Dylan does have a bunch of threats, a bunch of big cards.
He's going to go with Hardcast Arclight Phoenix. You can do that too, folks. It works well. 3 damage heading Zach's way.
Yeah, it is allowed, and it makes sense to do this first because either it gets path exiled or it just doesn't get dealt with and you get in for a bunch of damage, which is certainly going to be useful.
Yeah. A lot of game plans available to Izzet Phoenix. They can overwhelm you all at once, or they can play a longer chip damage style game. And an Arclight Phoenix sticking on the battlefield will certainly contribute to that. Here's 3 mana. It's just going to be Detention Sphere on 1 Arclight Phoenix. I think Dylan's okay with that trade.
Yeah, it's not the worst. You don't get a land from Path to Exile, but you force your opponent to spend 3 mana. And also Detention Sphere is one of the more versatile cards in the Jeskai control deck, capable of answering whatever weird threat the Izzet Phoenix deck sideboarded into.
Of course. Big follow-up here from Dylan Donegan. Pia and Kieran Nalaar, the 4-drop, entering the battlefield, bringing a couple friends with it.
Yeah, another card that doesn't seem like much, but is hard to answer in its own way, where Zach basically needs a sweeper to deal with this effectively.
Yeah, and Zach does have a sweeper in hand. I believe he's holding Anger of the Gods. I don't think he has a second red mana source, though.
Yep.
Here is Jace the Mind Sculptor, though. Just going to brainstorm.
Yeah, I think Zach knows that Jace will very likely die next turn, but is desperately digging for another red source.
I think he found it in the form of a fetch land.
Flooded Strand. I'm a sniper.
Yeah, you're good at this.
Don't have me do the green ones. I don't know.
You
the
only
green
know the
ones.
blue
Yeah.
ones. Well, that fits with your style. So here's a Pyromancer Ascension from Dylan Donegan. Zach says sure, that resolves. He's got the Wear Tear at the ready. Let's see if he's going to spend some resources to try and keep this Jace alive. Dylan sending 2 creatures at the Jace, 1 at Zach. It's really just not realistic to protect Jace given the activated ability on Pia and Kieran Nalaar.
Right, Zach would need 2 spells basically to keep his Jace alive on that turn, and if he had something like a Lightning Bolt, you would just Lightning Bolt the Pia on your turn to ensure that Jace stays alive, but in this case, even if Zach pathed the Pia, Dylan could sacrifice the Thopter that was attacking Zach.
Yep. It's a pretty much no-win situation. Here's a follow-up from Dylan. It's going to be Narset. Starting to accumulate a lot of little advantages. Zach going to fire off the Wear Tear, take out that Pyromancer Ascension, but Narset is going to stick. Let's see what Dylan does here. Interesting that you would usually minus this with impunity against a control strategy, but when you go back to Jeskai, Lightning Bolt could be around.
It could be, but I think it's really unlikely given that the Jace died that turn. And Zach had an open mana still.
But it was tough to protect either way, like we mentioned.
Zach also has a Celestial Colonnade on the battlefield already that he could potentially use to kill Narset, so I guess that's another reason to do it.
Right.
And at the very least, unless Dylan wanted to specifically go -/ to have access to 2 cards, he's going to be able to have the same information on his next turn when he gets to decide which of the 4 cards he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fine just letting Zach take a turn. You know that Narset's probably not going to die, and then you have more information with what card you want to select. But it's small.
Yeah, very interesting decision point. We do see that there's a Detention Sphere in Zach's hand, so he could, if he so chooses, answer that Narset without it providing any value. This is an important turn for Zach. What he does here could very well determine the outcome of this game.
Yeah.
Step 1, Anger of the Gods. Got to get that Pia and Kieran off the battlefield.
I think just a full clearing Dylan's side is probably it.
It's going to be Ashiok.
Okay. That's reasonable too.
Exiling Dylan's graveyard.
This allows Dylan to use Narset once, but it means that he doesn't get to flash back the Faithless Looting that had been put there. If he has another Pyromancer Ascension, you basically won't be able to get that active this turn. So this might be a little safer, even though it feels bad to actually let your opponent activate Narset.
Right. So the follow-up coming from Dylan Donegan, it's Thing in the Ice, and it's Saheeli.
And again, no Narset activation.
Right. And I think Zach Allen, again, faced with an important decision.
All threats are Lightning Bolt proof.
He's going to cast the Detention Sphere, but Saheeli is going to be the target. He's letting Narset remain. I mean, look, he doesn't have ways to draw extras right now. It's not actually inhibiting him from doing anything.
Right, so then what's scarier? Saheeli building an army of servos or just Narset drawing 2 cards when you know the Izzet Phoenix deck has a ton of air in it?
Yeah, I think Zach made the right call there. I think Saheeli was the scarier card. Ashiok going to continue to do its thing. Exiling some cards. Dylan again reaching for that die. Can't decide when to pull the trigger on the minus from the Narset. Looks like we were going to cast Opt here.
Yep, again, play the card Opt that has like a very small decision to make before you play Narset or use the Narset ability where you might have a larger decision,
right.
And that way you have more information to go off of now that you know what card you've actually drawn off Opt.
Now it's time for Narset. One of the options for Dylan, Blood Moon. The other, Serum Visions. He's going to take Serum Visions. Feels with Plains and Island already on the battlefield. Blood Moon not impactful enough. Just looking to build towards getting that Thing in the Ice active.
Is Ashiok better than Rest in Peace?
My instinct is no.
It lets you keep all your Snapcasters, I guess. But
it depends how many searches you're shutting down, how awkward it actually makes things for your opponent on the other side of the battlefield. Dylan being smart enough not to draw fetch lands at this point. And here's a Lightning Bolt on that Ashiok. That's going to go ahead and flip the first copy of Thing in the Ice. Unless Zach has a response. He does. It's Snapcaster Mage. Flashing back. What exactly?
So in response to the Thing in the Ice transforming, Zach is going to play Snapcaster Mage out, get a little bit of value, maybe target an Opt.
Yeah.
And then the Thing has to return the Snapcaster Mage. So Zach just gets to flashback a spell from his graveyard for free.
Yeah, free spell. Can't complain about that. It is going to be Opt targeted. Ashiok's going to die. Snapcaster back in hand. And here comes Thing in the Ice. That's going to rumble through. Big damage from the Awoken Horror. Zach going to go ahead and cast that Opt. Doesn't like what he sees. Zach, though, in a very dangerous position, could just die next turn. 2 Snapcasters in hand. Was that a Supreme Verdict?
Have to exile.
Okay. Path to Exile is a good way to start getting out of this.
Yeah, so that's going to clean things up, and I don't know how many basics Dylan milled over, but he only has 1 on the battlefield, so he's likely going to be able to get a bunch of lands too. So if he ever has a turn where he is able to cantrip into cantrip or has access to a Faithless Looting, like Dylan's going to do some really powerful stuff.
Absolutely. Zach, I think, looking to maybe see if he can bait another Thing in the Ice flip, get a little bit more value from those Snapcaster Mages. Lightning Bolt is the find from Dylan off the Narset minus. Gonna tap 4 mana for Arclight Phoenix. Zach says sure. And here come the attacks. So Zach going to have to do something here.
So from Dylan's side, it probably looks like this Lightning Bolt is relevant. I mean, he had the option of Lightning Bolt versus Cantrip, but if Zach has... I guess if Zach has a removal spell, you know that he has a Snapcaster to go along with it, so it's kind of awkward. I was thinking Thing plus Arclight Phoenix would make it so almost no matter what, the Lightning Bolt's relevant. I guess you could tag team the Bolt with the Thing in the Ice that Dylan still has on the battlefield. Yeah, I think I would have rather had a Cantrip there.
Definitely an interesting decision point. Zach going to do a little fetching here. First Thing in the Ice has been dealt with via Path to Exile. He knows about the Lightning Bolt in hand. Probably doesn't want to go down as low as 4. And it looks like he has announced that second path. Here's the Snapcaster. There's the path. So no damage here to Zach Allen. Has some chump blockers for that Awoken Horror in future turns. But really needs to get some battlefield presence. There's a Teferi. That's a good start.
It's basically the perfect card.
Looking like Zach may be starting to turn the corner on this turn. Let's see what he can do here. Step 1 is a Celestial Colonnade attack. Passes the turn back to Dylan.
Wild.
And Dylan just ships the turn back to Zach. Makes that look pretty good.
I guess you don't want to play Teferi and then
just minus
on the Thing and try and attack the Narset next turn, because that makes you vulnerable to the Bolt you already have. So it'd be play Teferi,
right,
and then just have it chill there for a little bit.
And now here's Narset. That's going to find some more gas for Zach and shut off the cantrips, but he is going to draw the Lightning Bolt. He knew about that. I think he was comfortable with that exchange here. Logic Knot off the top. Great option there for Zach.
Logic Knot's another good reason to have Ashiok instead of Rest in Peace.
Sure. Makes sense. Zach going to pass the turn back. Dylan going to cast follow-up Arclight Phoenix. That was a big draw here. Zach having himself a think. He's going to fire off that logic knot. Looks like X is going to be 5. That's good enough to bin that Arclight Phoenix for the time being. We'll see if it's going to be coming back. Zach takes a draw here. Field of Ruin, I believe. Snapcaster and Teferi in hand.
Yeah, at this point with Dylan basically out of gas, it's pretty easy for Zach to just try and set up his defenses as best he can before eventually closing the game with Colonnade, Snapcaster, whatever he wants to.
Right.
The window for Dylan to draw cantrip into cantrip is closing very rapidly. And I think even at this point, you might see Zach just counterspell the first cantrip with Snapcaster Mage.
Makes sense to me. Here's an opt. Zach gonna bottom that top card. Takes a draw. Cards are flowing now. And Dylan just gonna go ahead and extend the hand. He read the writing on the wall, knew he could not take that game down with Zach having established his defenses. And Zach takes the